us on Facebook and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So one of the questions that I keep coming back to is, what are we going to do with all of these people that are being arrested? And there have been over more than 100 people so far arrested, and good. We should be locking these people up, every one of them. Maximum sentences for people who are going to invade our nation's capital and attempt this seditious act. But the thing that really bothered me today, as I saw the Justice Department came out, when asked whether there could be any charges criminally against Donald Trump, and they said, well, probably not. No. And ultimately, I think Wednesday made it almost impossible for there not to be an investigation into him and for him not to stand trial somewhere. That could be New York. And here to share some thoughts on accountability and maybe what we do with all of these people, I've asked Eliza Orlins to come talk with us. She's a New York City public defender, also candidate for Manhattan District Attorney. Eliza, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, you were so close. Eliza.
Oh, damn it. And I just wrote that down.
You even said it right before. But listen, I'm so glad to be here with you tonight. And I think, this is such an important thing that we need to be talking about, because in reality, the thing that keeps a refrain that we keep having to say is no one is above the law. Yep. No one is above the law.
No, and this is what I keep telling my kids. The reality is, I don't care who you are. There needs to be consequences. And I don't care if it's President of the United States. There has to be consequences for not just what happened Wednesday, but for all of the crimes that have happened throughout this last 4 years. There has to be someone to hold him accountable.
Well, not just this last 4 years, but if you think about the fact that this is someone who has been purportedly committing crimes in New York City and across the country for years and years prior to that. I mean, we would not be in this mess that we are in if the Manhattan District Attorney, Cy Vance, had not failed to prosecute Trump and the entire Trump family. In the early 2010, 2011, 2012, he dropped cases against them and, has constantly given breaks to those who are wealthy and well-connected and powerful. And we are seeing the far-reaching consequences that local DA actions have on an entire nation.
Yeah, I mean, had someone done their job before 2015, maybe we wouldn't have had to live through the nightmare of the last 4 years. That's an excellent point.
Exactly. But for the fact that Cy Vance failed to prosecute the Trumps in 2012, we might not have ever had a President Trump. We might not have ever had to live through any of this, but this is someone who has constantly really not held those who are rich and powerful accountable. I mean, this is a guy who argued for leniency for Jeffrey Epstein, who didn't prosecute Harvey Weinstein for years on end, and not going after the Trumps is probably the one that has the biggest consequences to our entire nation.
Now, I get people who tell me Cy Vance is this great crusader. He's going to be the one who's going to hold Trump accountable, and I fully expect something. So you're saying he should have done this sooner, and now this could be seen as more political? Is that where I'm getting?
Well, so the interesting thing about when people call these prosecutions political, I mean, I think that sometimes the impression is that progressive prosecutors are motivated by their decisions, motivated by politics and their decision making. But in fact, it's quite the opposite. DAs like Cy Vance, who avoid prosecuting cases against the rich and powerful when they're going to be challenging and carry political risk, and then magically suddenly become interested in prosecuting these cases when they become politically advantageous to them. That is what is political in nature, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's we're in this really weird time because there's been such a sense of lawlessness around him and his administration that, it doesn't matter, I think, especially to his base, who's now, I hope, waking up to the reality of the situation he has put this country in. And maybe they're going to be the ones calling for accountability. But at the end of this, I keep going back to that, and I know it sounds like a broken record, but, the old Beretta thing, you do the time if you do the crime. everyone should be held accountable for what they do on Wednesday or any other day.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about like you do the time if you do the crime is that really only applies to some people. And I've seen that over and over. I mean, I've spent over a decade of my life as a public defender here in Manhattan, and I've seen the way in which people like my clients, who are predominantly Black and brown, who are lower income, sometimes LGBTQIA or people with disabilities, people who are marginalized, the way they are treated. They are forced to do time for things that are crimes, if you will. And meanwhile, other people are treated completely differently. And I think that the events of Wednesday really bore that out. I mean, if you think about the fact that, and so many people have articulated this so well, you know, Congresswoman Cori Bush and many others who said, if the people storming the Capitol had been Black and brown, can you even imagine what a bloodbath that would have been?
No.
I mean, they all would have been just shot dead. And there's really no question in my mind that that's true. And instead, we saw videos of police officers pulling gates to the side and welcoming people in.
No, you know, that's a, you know, I look at this and look, I'm a white guy and I know I have white privilege, but that was full on display for the nation to see. And there's no way that you can deny what happened on Wednesday was a kind of a stupid version of white privilege.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, I kind of almost hate to compare it to the peaceful BLM protests that went on all summer. You know, I was out in the streets marching with people, and we were peacefully exercising our First Amendment rights to protest and to speak out about police violence. And I don't think anything about what happened on Wednesday was legitimate in nature, so I hesitate to make that comparison. But I do think that, you know, watching these fascists and these domestic terrorists be welcomed with open arms to destroy and terrorize our nation's capital it's heart-wrenching for all of us. And I think that, you know, a lot of what's happening is what we've heard now after the fact, that so many of the people who were there to terrorize the Capitol were flashing their badges. You know, the infiltration of law enforcement by people who are part of these extremist groups has really grown a great deal. And I think we really need to think about how to address that.
No, that's an excellent point, because there were a lot of, you know, cops taking selfies with these people and all of this stuff. So, you know, in going forward, because, you know, there's been that accusation that, you know, our police forces have this stream running through it. We have to get rid of that. But, you know, and how do you change that culture? You know, I go back to this story. I have a friend who was I would say probably the most docile human being I've ever met. 2 years on the police force, a college university police force in a city. He turned into somebody who was violent, got thrown off the force for police brutality at some point down the line, and became racist as well. And I just say it was, well, that's the culture. Is that just an excuse, or is that really part of what you see?
You know, it's hard, because I think that there are so many people who say, oh, you know, with additional training, or it's a few bad apples. But I think that when you really look at it, when you think about, you know, the experience of your friend who went in without having those tendencies and then turned into something else, that it is the culture, that it is like, you know, the infiltration of these police forces with white supremacists, with people who have sympathies and allegiances to these racist and fascist extremist groups. And so I think that we really need to think about how we're going to address this. And I hope that, you know, there'll be a full investigation, you know, by the Department of Justice under the Biden administration as to what really happened that allowed our Capitol to be permeated, that forced our congressmen and women to be barricaded in their offices, hiding under desks, looking around for weapons and afraid for their lives on Wednesday.
Yeah, it's incredible. But, you know, I look back at this this moment, because as I said, you know, I have friends who are policemen. You know, some of them are good. Some of them, you know, I have questions about. And they all keep coming back to, well, the reason is because these are the people that we deal with. These are the people that we constantly have to arrest. And for me, it comes back to the massive economic inequality that we have in this country. That if you're dealing with a class of people who are in poverty, who are trying to figure out how to survive, and then you over police those areas and you know, with zero tolerance crackdowns, you create that kind of tension, I think, to where it's almost natural to see someone that you're constantly arresting and constantly treating in an inhumane fashion as inhumane.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that that's, that's one of the big reasons I'm running for Manhattan District Attorney, is that I've seen the way in which our system is cruel and unjust and inhumane, and that treats people in a horrific way, and really is just rampantly violating human rights and human dignity. And I'm seeing that, many of my opponents are people who've spent their careers as prosecutors, who've held positions of power in organizations that have perpetuated this inhumane system. And I've watched as people have, really just had their lives destroyed by our criminal legal system, by these arrests for low-level offenses that, in fact, shouldn't be prosecuted at all. That as DA, I would not prosecute. I mean, I have stories that I tell, like, for example, I talk about a client of mine who worked as an assistant manager at a grocery store in Lower Manhattan. He'd worked at the same grocery store for 25 years. And one night he was closing up the store. It was around 11 o'clock at night. He bought 2 bags of groceries with his employee discount to bring home to his family. And he locked up the store, walked over to the subway. He got on the Uptown A train to head home, and he put 2 bags of groceries on the seats next to him on the uncrowded subway car. He got to the 125th Street stop. 2 uniformed NYPD officers got on the train, grabbed his groceries, dumped them to the ground, and placed him in handcuffs and took him to jail for the night for the crime of occupying multiple seats on a transit facility. Literally taking up 2 seats on the subway. And he spent the night in jail for that. And so, like, the anger and heartbreak and frustration at the way the system operates, the way that it is just rigged against those who are, not wealthy and well-connected and powerful, who are just, who are lower income folks, who are Black and brown people, who are marginalized in some way. It's just so unjust. And we need to fix it. We need to change this system.
Manhattan, right?
Yep.
Wall Street, right?
Yep.
So we're gonna go after a guy, trash his groceries, lock him up in jail for taking up 2 seats, and yet Wall Street, full of the biggest criminals on the planet, we don't do anything to them.
Exactly. There are people who are perpetrating harms on our communities, who are stealing to the tune of millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. And yet it's my clients who maybe walk into a CVS and take a Snickers bar because they're hungry, or take a pint of ice cream for $4.99. And those are the people who are arrested and taken to jail and prosecuted.
Yeah, I go back to 2000, 2008 into 2009. I was expecting perp walks on a daily. I was predicting a Macy's kind of parade of criminals being arrested and prosecuted, and that didn't happen. I guess we were too busy going after the guy with the ice cream and the guy taking up 2 seats.
Yeah, well, actually, what's very interesting is Cy Vance is the only prosecutor in the nation who did bring a criminal case after the 2008 collapse. And that was, in fact, the wrong prosecution to bring. Like, he brought the one criminal prosecution against a bank. And you know what it was? It was against a Chinese American family-owned bank. And he was like, he saw it as low-hanging fruit. He's like, great, I'll get a criminal conviction, good for me. And it was another racist prosecution. The family had to spend millions of dollars to defend this case, take it all the way to trial, years of their lives, and eventually finally got a full acquittal. But for him to go after this family-owned bank, to say the one criminal prosecution I'm going to bring in 2008, from 2008, is against this Chinese family-owned bank. It was so wrong and so unjust as well. So again, giving breaks to the real people, to the cases that would be difficult, that would be politically unpopular.
How can people help? How can people help you to get into a position? Because I'm of the mindset we need to have better people in these positions, district attorneys and House of Representative and state legislator positions. We need to have decent, honest people, hardworking people in these positions. How can people help you out?
Well, I'd be so grateful for the support. People can go to elizaorlins.com. That's ELIZAORLINS.com. And they can get involved. We need their donations because another way in which these systems are maintained, the way that it's so difficult to upset the status quo, is in campaign finance laws. Right now, the donation limit in my race per individual donor is $35,000. If you'd wanted to give to Joe Biden in the primary, the max you could give is $2,800. So it's more than 10 times the federal limit. And this means there are people in the race who are getting checks, who make 10 phone calls, get 10 friends to give 35 grand and raise $350,000 in an afternoon. But we are doing it from thousands and thousands of grassroots supporters across the nation. We have people giving, $1, $5, $25, whatever they can chip in. And that is how we are making our movement happen, because we're a people-powered movement. We're out there accountable to all the people who are supporting us. And we're so grateful for the support. And we have a filing deadline Monday at midnight. So if anyone can give between now and then, we would be greatly, greatly appreciated.
And the website again was?
ElizaOrlins.com.
And we'll make sure we get links out on social media and how folks can do that. I'll make sure that I'm going to give a donation. So people, please join me in donating to ElizaOrlins.com. Like I said, we'll get that out on social media so people can do that. Last question I've got for you, because I look at these moments, and if you had like a 30-second, that elevator speech, why you over some of the other folks?
That's a great one. So, the real thing is that we need is someone who truly understands what this criminal legal system has done to people. And this is a system that has allowed prosecutors to destroy people's lives with impunity, and then look back and say, oh, well, maybe I made a mistake, or I was wrong, or, this is something that the system was really at fault for, or I was doing my job. But the reality is, the experience of being a prosecutor, I would implore everyone who's listening to think about what it really means to have prosecutorial experience in America, to have played an active role in a system this unjust and cruel, and to have held a position of power in an organization that has rampantly violated human rights and human dignity. What prosecutors do every day to the people like the people I represent is cruel and inhumane and plainly wrong. And it's taken far too long for us to really acknowledge that. And I think we cannot trust an arsonist to be the one to put out the fire. How can we trust someone to change a system in which they've been complicit? And so it's public defenders, not former prosecutors, who have the experience we need, who have demonstrated the commitment to acknowledging these problems and trying to fix them. I've spent my entire career going up against the Manhattan DA's office, and I've represented thousands of people charged with crimes, handling as many as 200 cases at one time. And for every human being I've represented, I've had to manage countless moving parts, from strategic decisions and interviewing witnesses to managing teams with investigators and social workers and expert witnesses. And all at the same time, never losing sight of the fact that there is a human being at the heart of the case with a unique story and a unique circumstance. This is someone's child, someone's parent, someone's sibling, someone's loved one. And when prosecutors make these decisions that have devastating impacts on people's lives, they're not the ones who are picking up the pieces. It's public defenders who are advocating for restorative justice and rehabilitation, and who are working to break this cycle and change the system. And that is the experience that we need. And so I will be the next Manhattan DA who is focused on bringing about real transformative change and changing this system and bringing us to the right side of history. This is so long overdue. And I have the experience to understand the implications of these policies in the real world. And I have the authentic commitment to changing them. And so I hope you will all join me in this fight. And I would be so grateful and honored to receive your support.
Excellent stuff. I love the passion. I wish you the best. I hope folks will go to the website and donate, ElizaOrlins.com. We'll make sure we get links out. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Rick. Great to be here.
Good talking with you. Again, ElizaOrlins.com. We'll get links out. Make sure that you donate. I'm going to do it here during the break. Make sure that you do as well. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.